Good morning, everybody. I'm Kevin Kochanski, and I'm on the Arches team at the GCI. A lot of what Kathleen said about why we're doing this is sort of the backbone, maybe, of what you'll hear in the next 30 minutes or so. So I will start by returning to why Lingo, and that was an initial problem, which was there was a need for a better way of managing authority data in the community that was apparent to us. A solution like Lingo would solve a widespread core problem in the cultural heritage community. And because we already have Arches with its robust data management capabilities to work on, building Lingo would not mean starting from scratch. Lingo is built on the foundation of the Arches platform, which has over 130 known implementations worldwide. Already that's a compelling case with a built-in potential user base of that size. As part of the Arches ecosystem, Lingo can be a core component of an existing Arches infrastructure, but it can also be a powerful, independent application. Lingo can be part of a broader data management strategy that doesn't otherwise include Arches, because it was built to interact with other data systems. Arches, and subsequently Lingo, only exist because they're open source, allowing us or anybody to build on the foundation of one platform for an entirely new solution. That's exactly what we did with Lingo. Arches isn't driven by bottom lines, it's driven by collaborative contribution and user-informed needs. That means there's no surprise goal shifting with Lingo. The direction will always be dictated by the needs of the cultural heritage community and in keeping with the GCI mission. And open source means sustainability and security. The more eyes on the code means more secure, long-term solution that the community can ultimately support themselves. Far beyond the support of the GCI, it's community that sustains the Arches project. Engaging with the community is a two-way street. When members engage and offer their skills to the community, they also benefit from the expertise of other community members. Implementers have access to bug fixes, code, and resource models that are shared by a network of peers who have similar goals. Meeting and collaborating with those who share your specific goals allows the community to become a support system to itself. However, there are also service providers in the community. A healthy ecosystem of multiple service providers ensures sustainability without being locked to a single vendor. And I will pass it to Dennis to get into some more technical details about Lingo.
Thanks, Kevin. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dennis Wuthrich. I'm the CEO of Farallon Geographics, and I have the pleasure of leading the primary development team for the Arches platform and for Lingo specifically. And I wanted to take the next couple minutes in advance of letting you see Lingo in action to come back to this core question about the role of vocabularies and thesauri, specifically in how they help improve access to and integration of and ultimately understanding of the data that we collect. And I'll just point out that we as a species are really, really good at collecting data. And we're only getting better at it. I mean, the rate at which we start to pull information from our sensors, our aircraft, our satellites is just phenomenal. But there's a big difference between being good at collecting data and being able to understand the information, the knowledge encased in that data. And that's where thesauri can play a real role. As cultural heritage-minded folks, we're particularly good at building lots and lots of data sets. Oftentimes, we're thinking about project-specific or program-specific or organizational efforts to describe objects of cultural significance. And what we end up building are data sets that are like islands. They're tantalizingly close to each other, but separated by deep waters, oftentimes. And that's a real problem. We need to be able to take our data and make them more understandable and more useful. And there's a number of reasons why that's the case. There are a number of factors that stand in our way. Some of them are technical, like we don't always connect the systems that manage our data sets as efficiently as we can. Some of them are cultural. Sometimes we don't want to share our data. But I'm going to say that one of the key reasons that we have a hard time of integrating our information is because of the terminology that we use. Fundamentally, one of the key reasons that integrating cultural heritage data, which are typically interested in describing and categorizing and evaluating cultural heritage objects, rely on language. And if this, for many of you, I don't think this is surprising. For some of you, you might be sitting there saying, well, that seems like a provocative thing to say. What is he really trying to get at? And I have a couple little thought experiments that I'd like you to participate in. And don't worry, I won't call on anybody. Nobody has to raise their hand. But I think it'd be really helpful to just explore how language is a key driver in being able to integrate the data that we collect. And I'll start off with a simple question. When I say gift, what comes to mind? What image do you have in your head? And I suspect it's something like this. For many of you, you're probably immediately thinking of Christmas morning or a birthday party, and you get a present. And if you're a native English speaker, makes total sense. But I could say the exact same word, gift, I could spell it exactly the same way, and if we were sitting in Stuttgart, we'd have a very different mental image of what this collection of letters actually means. And this is important because if you're going to be integrating data and you're relying on matching words, you're going to be disappointed. That is not enough. We need to match not just the letters, but the idea behind the letters. In fact, that's the key point here, is instead of relying on a naive way of trying to integrate data across different data sets, we need to start thinking about the concept itself and how we reference that concept. And this is a key thing for Lingo. Lingo manages concepts and the labels around them. Let's try another one. Second one, what is the mental image that comes to mind when I say the word mortar? And this one's a little trickier because there's a bunch of potential answers here. And any one of these things is a completely legitimate thing to have in your head if somebody says the word mortar. It isn't until I say, well, actually, I'm thinking about building materials specifically that you can come up with the appropriate interpretation of that string of letters. And the point here is contextual information is essential in being able to understand the content and therefore the appropriateness and maybe even the mechanics of how to integrate data across different data sets. Now, mortar as a building material is fine, but immediately, at least for me, that raises a bunch of additional questions. What's the difference between mortar and cement, and are they related in some way? What are the relationships amongst these ideas of building materials? And we can impart structure. We can impart hierarchies that provide a way of understanding the context in which particular concepts can be thought of and can be used. And this idea of hierarchy is really important and is, again, an essential part of integrating data. And then a last one. Here's two words, claw beaker. And I'll tell you, if somebody asked me what this was six or 7 weeks ago, I would have had no idea. I would have thought of some crazy chemistry professor in a lab somewhere. It's only once you understand that a claw beaker is actually a particular object that hails from the 6th and 7th century Anglo-Saxon England that you know what a claw beaker is. And even now, after I've said that, you probably still don't have a mental image of what that object is. It's not until you see it and you can understand it that the terms and the concept come together. And the fact that it's a picture that's helping with our language isn't just coincidence, and it's not just for people. More and more, the computers and the algorithms that we rely on to integrate data are as adept at interpreting pictures as we are. So, what do we get for all this work in putting vocabularies together? We have now the tool sets that we need. The vocabulary is itself a way of enhancing integration between data sets much more rapidly and with much less effort than without them. They enhance understanding of information in ways that are universal and provide for better, more efficient, more appropriate search and discovery. And we'll come back to this in a moment, it's I think, a necessary precursor for helping ensure that the growth of artificial intelligence agents do the right thing with the right information. So what do we get with vocabularies? We get fair data. We get information that actually starts to achieve and deal with this problem that we have. Instead of growing isolated data sets, we can start to build integrated data sets. And we can build those data sets that adhere to appropriate guidelines, that they're built for the collective benefit of a community, that they're built responsibly, and they're built ethically. And that's why we built Lingo. We built Lingo specifically to provide the tooling that organizations need to build these core tools, the core vocabularies that drive meaning, understanding, and discovery. So I'm going to turn it over to Rob here in just a moment, but I want to tee up a couple things for you to look at. As you watch Rob show you some of the capabilities of Lingo, think about what you're seeing. I would invite you to ask questions about how concept hierarchies are implemented in Lingo and how they're helpful for providing context. Look at how labels, and in particular multilingual labels, are managed. Also think about how Lingo helps manage thesauri and vocabularies, how concepts evolve through time, how they're accessed, who has permission to work with them, and how can they be worked with, how can multiple people work on them collaboratively. And then finally, think about how this work turns search tools into more effective ways of finding and understanding information. And with that, I'll leave it for Rob.
Well, first of all, thank you all for having me here today. My name is Rob Gaston. I work with Dennis at Farallon Geographics as a developer. I've been working on Arches since the very beginning, and I've been leading the Lingo development team. And I'm really excited to show you all a bit about what Lingo can do in action here. So this is a live demo that I'm going to be doing. For this demo, I'm going to be playing a role. I'll be a vocabulary editor for a cultural heritage institution, in this case, Historic England is the example that I'm using. They manage a set of vocabularies that are used across a number of different systems called the FISH vocabularies. You'll hear a little bit more about that from Phil later in a little video. But FISH stands for Forum on Information Standards and Heritage. These vocabularies are used, like I said, across a number of different systems. And so let's just get into it here. This is Lingo, so you land on this splash page, and I can sign in here. Once I'm signed in, I'm presented with a search tool and some different navigation tools. I'm just going to jump to this schemes page so you can see the various thesauri that I have loaded here. So as you can see, Lingo supports loading many different thesauri. The FISH thesauri are separated into distinct schemes. So I've got all of the FISH thesauri loaded here, as well as the Getty AAT, Art and Architecture thesaurus. So I pipe these data in from the published N triples that the Getty vocabs provide, and I'm going to be using this as a reference. So as I'm going through as a vocabulary editor, I'm going to be looking to AAT for some inspiration in terms of how I might enhance my vocabularies. In addition to that view of the schemes that I showed you just before, we have this hierarchy view, which allows you to drill down into schemes as you'd like. So this is the FISH archaeological objects thesaurus. We're going to be looking at that. Down here at the Getty AAT, I'm going to use this little focus tool. You can reduce some of the noise in this vocabulary, in this hierarchy viewer that way. As you can see, and as I'm sure most of you know, the AAT data are quite rich and include lots of different kinds of concepts with lots of different metadata associated with them. We also have this dashboard page, which gives me some aggregated statistics about the schemes that I have loaded. So this is across all of my 15 schemes, the 14 fish thesauri I have loaded, as well as the Getty AAT. You can see I've got 70.8K concepts in there and about 500,000 labels. I can filter that on schemes, and you'll appreciate just how much data is in, as you probably know already, in the Getty AAT. You can tell most of the concepts and labels that I have are actually coming out of the Getty AAT. I'd like to point out, and maybe it would benefit from expanding some of these, the Lingo application is fully internationalizable. So I'm going to switch from English into Spanish, and you'll see that the labels in the application are now in Spanish, but also the terms are translated to pref labels for the selected language where available. So not all of the concepts in the Getty AAT have pref labels in Spanish, but for those that do, we show the best possible label for the language that the user is visiting the application in. We also have support for alternative scripts and right-to-left text, like Arabic, for example. But as I am an English speaker, I'm going to stick to English to help my navigation here. And then I'd also like to highlight quickly, we have this quick term search that allows you to search across all of your concepts, across all of your schemes, quickly using any terms, so pref labels, alternative labels, any languages. So an example of that would be rivers in the AAT. This is a concept that has a lot of translations in it, as you can see. But I can search for this same concept with the term rivers, or I could use the term ríos in Spanish. You can see rivers there. I could use the term Fluss in German, or I can use alternative scripts or even single character terms. So this is the preferred term for rivers in Chinese. You'll notice we get different fuzzy matches on the different strings that we provide, but the concept that has an exact match, rivers, i.e. the closest match, always comes to the top as a convenience to the user. I could also search on an alternative label in Chinese or a pref label in Arabic, and always get back to the closest match, which is rivers. So now I'm going to go back to this concept of me as the vocabulary editor, trying to draw inspiration from the Getty AAT data that I've loaded in here to enhance my vocabularies, the fish vocabularies. And so I'm going to jump to a concept using this term search that I'm interested in, and that is sensor. So this is the sensor concept in the archaeological objects thesaurus, and I forgot to clear this. And as you can see, sensor has some information associated to it, but it's pretty scant. Sensor has an alternative label for thurible, or that is thurible. That's interesting. The concept note is quite general and terse. A vessel in which incense is burnt. Okay, that tells me some things about it. I can also see its various hierarchical positions and maybe draw some conclusions from that. But there's not a whole lot for me to go on here. And so this might be just fine for a UK monument record. But perhaps if I'm thinking about publishing these as linked open data, or aligning with international partners. England has partners in Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland. Maybe this is underdescribed, and it's certainly unlinked to any other data. Now let's pop over and take a look at a similar concept in the Getty AAT, and that would be sensors. Okay, immediately I'm seeing a lot more information here, right? We've got 25 different labels, pref and alternative labels across various languages. Each of these labels, by the way, has sources and contributors information that are quite robust. And the same goes for concept notes down below here. We've got much more detailed scope notes across a number of different languages, and those scope notes have source and contributor information associated with them. So I can start to learn more about sensors by exploring this concept in Getty AAT that's so rich. I can also look at associated concepts and understand this concept as it relates to other concepts in the AAT. So that's helpful for me building my understanding of what a sensor is. And then I can see all of its hierarchical positions. You can see there are many more hierarchical positions here for sensors in the Getty AAT, as there are many more concepts in the Getty AAT. And then interestingly, it has narrower concepts as well. And maybe even more interestingly, for what I just saw in my sensor concept, thoroughlables is a narrower concept. So now I'm starting to learn some more things about sensors as opposed to or as distinct from thoroughlables. And in fish, thoroughlable is just an alt label for sensor. But in AAT, it's actually a distinct concept. It's a Christian liturgical sensor, and it has siblings or cousins for other traditions and other kinds of sensors. And now, as a fish editor, I might make decisions about how I want to manage my vocabulary, right? Do I want to split the sensor concept into two concepts? Do I want to amend it with scope notes that would make these distinctions more clear? All of that's up to me as a vocabulary editor, but I can draw some conclusions from what I see in the AAT data. So to kind of expand that workflow out a bit, I'm going to take a look at our advanced search interface. So this allows me to do advanced searches, as the name implies, across all of my concepts and schemes, and do that using a number of different kinds of facets. So a simple search that might be relevant to what I'm trying to do here would be to search for labels that contain the word sensors. So I can do that search, and you can see I've got two concepts. Okay, maybe that's interesting to me. Maybe I want to expand that out a bit, and I'm going to add a group. I'm going to say labels that contain, I'm going to use the word sensor, actually, because AAT uses plural, whereas fish uses singular. I'm going to say the label contains sensor, or the note contains sensor. So now I'm getting back a slightly larger set of results. I've got 11 results. And so that's interesting to me. These might inform my thinking about how I modify my sensor concept in the fish vocabulary. But I'm also noticing that really I'm focused on sensor objects, right? And I'm getting a few results in here that are maybe spurious to that. Review is in the activities facet. Early post-classical is a style or period. I really want to focus on objects. So I might further amend this search to do some hierarchical querying. So I only want to see schemes that are in the fish archaeological objects thesaurus, or have a hierarchical relationship to, if I could spell, the objects facet, and I want to include all of the results on down the hierarchy. So now this should find me all of the hits for this label or note sensor that are within either the fish archaeological objects thesaurus or the objects facet in the AAT. So now I've got 8 results down here, and this is kind of interesting. If I'm, say, interested in revisiting this search, I can save it. So I can save the search, and I can give it a name, sensor object concepts, let's say. I can save that off, and then at will, I can recall this search. So if I wanted to revisit this query sometime in the future, I can just call that back up, and I can delete it whenever I'm done with it. A different kind of editorial kind of search I might want to do would be something like this saved search that I've got here, which is concepts that are in the fish archaeological objects scheme and lack a note that is not note exists, right? So interesting. I've got 3 concepts in my archaeological objects thesaurus that don't have any kinds of scope notes. So this might be an indicator that I should do a little research and come back and amend these concepts with some more detail. A third kind of query that I might be interested in would be something like this. So I want to see all of the hierarchical children of the sensors concept in the Getty AAT. So this might inform my thinking about thoroughless or other narrower concepts for sensor in my fish thesaurus. And I can see there's 8 results here. These are interesting to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new concept set. Sensors, children, AAT, call it. So this is how I can save the results of my query and revisit them. So I'm going to create that set, and then I'm going to select the results that I want to add, which is all of these. I'm going to say add to set, and I'm going to pick that set I just created, and I'm going to add them. So I can have as many concept sets as I want, and now that I've added them to a concept set, I can freely visit those from this Explore panel as I'm looking at concepts and schemes within Lingo. So here's my set, and you can see I've got all of these concepts here, and I could jump to thoroughless if I'm interested in that. Maybe some of these I decide I'm specifically not interested in, so I could start to progressively remove things from the set, narrow it down, work through concepts that I might want to be reviewing or might be editing, and again, I can have as many of these sets as I want. Now let's jump back to my sensor concept and consider how I might want to actually apply some editorial changes based on everything I've learned here. In order to start an edit on a concept, the scheme has to be in the edit mode. So right now, the scheme is in published state, which means everything in the scheme has identifiers and URIs and is ready for publishing as linked open data. But if I want to start to apply some edits, I can jump up to the fish archaeological objects scheme, and I can flip it into edit mode. And now I can start editing things. I'm quickly going to use the browser back button here to get back to my sensor concept. And I did that to point out that Lingo is a web-based application. I don't know if that was obvious, but that means you have all of the capability of your browser. You can have multiple tabs, you can have multiple windows, you can use the browser history to navigate between concepts and schemes that you've brought up. It's a really convenient way to navigate through your data and explore them. So based on what I saw in AAT, I'm thinking I'm going to replace this alt label thorough with a child concept of sensor that is called thorough. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to delete the alt label. That alt label is now gone. And then I'm also going to amend this concept note because it's kind of terse, and a way to expand this out might be to include a more descriptive scope note. And I have one that I drafted just off screen. So I have a scope note that I've written. This is inspired by the AAT, but I'm not copying AAT wholesale. I'm using it as a reference, and then I'm writing improved notes and modifying my vocabulary in the editorial style and voice of the fish vocabularies. I can assign source and contributor information to anything really in Lingo, and this is just an example. We'll say the source is the Getty AAT, and the contributor is me. And so now you see we've got an improved note with source and contributor information now. So we're expanding on the conception of what a sensor is. Now I'm going to add a child concept for thorough. So I can just come over here and hit that button in the hierarchy to add child. And now I've got a new form to create my thorough concept. And I'm just going to type thorough in as the preferred label in English. And I'm going to skip over sources and contributors for the rest of this, just for expediency's sake. But were I actually doing this, I would assign sources and contributors as needed. And now I've got a new concept for thorough there beneath sensor. And I can start to expand on what this concept is. And I'm going to add a note. And that note, just again, copying a pre-drafted note off screen here. I missed a character. a type of sensor. So yeah, this is obviously a more explanatory note than certainly than we had in sensor before, that defines exactly what a thurible is. So that's great. Like Dennis mentioned in the claw beaker example, I might read this note and say, okay, I guess I kind of know what a thurible is, but an image is worth 1,000 words, as they say. And so I'm going to add an image here. And sorry, again, I'm just copying things off screen. So I can give a title. I'm going to call it example thurible. And a description, which will make more sense when I add the image. And then I can just upload an image. I got this from Wikimedia. They say it's a thurible. And now I've got an image of a thurible associated with my concept, and I or the next person can revisit this to know more about what I mean when I describe what a thurible is. Finally, I want to match this concept, thus linking it to the AAT data that I was just looking at. So I'm going to jump back to thuribles in AAT, and I'm just going to copy the URI for thuribles, because that's what we use to match to concepts. And I'm going to add a match concept for thurible. I'm going to call it a close match. It's current. And again, I'm just glossing over sources and contributors here for expediency's sake. So now I've got a pointer that will link my data to the AAT. And now when I publish those data as linked open data, the folks consuming that can follow this through and learn more about a thurible with the information in the AAT thesaurus. So once I'm happy with a set of edits that I made, noting that thurible is a draft concept, which means, again, it has no URI yet, and it has no identifier yet, I'd like to publish this so that I can start using these as linked open data. To do that, I just come back up to my scheme, the archaeological objects thesaurus, and I hit publish. So now this will generate identifiers and URIs based on some rules that I've defined here at the scheme level. So you can define template and sequences for generating identifiers. And now when I go back to thurible, not thuribles, thurible, in Fish Archaeological Objects thesaurus, you can see it's got a URI and an identifier assigned to it now. So I'm ready to start publishing these. To share this, I might want to then export it, right? So I'm just going to come up here and hit this export button. You can export in a number of different formats: SCOS XML, RDF XML, CSV, or JSON LD. You can give it an optional file name. I'm just going to hit export. And it lets me know that I'll be notified when that's ready. So I'll get a notification here when that file's ready. It takes a minute or so because it needs to save the file off the disk, and then I can just download it and share my thesaurus. There it is. You can see there's my download ready for me to download. In summary, hopefully this gave you a sense of like some of the core features of Lingo, that navigation and search across multiple schemes, a faceted advanced search that searches notes, labels, languages, hierarchical structure, matches, and it supports concept sets rather, and saved searches, so saving both the query and the results of a query. A rich interface for reporting on and editing concepts across schemes and navigating amongst the concepts within schemes. Publishing and exporting schemes. There's a lot of other features here that I didn't demo here. Things like the ability to review and edit sources and contributors directly in this interface. User permissions, roles, profile management for users. The ability to import thesauri. APIs for serving linked open data as an integration point. And then there's a lot more stuff that is either already under development or is planned for development in future versions. Things that I'm really excited about, like a Sparkle endpoint for querying data inside Lingo, as well as an interface for doing those queries. Support for additional import formats, explicit concept split and merge tools, and support for additional hierarchies like people, groups, periods, places. So lots more exciting stuff to come. And with that, thanks so much for letting me share, and I'll pass it back to Dennis.
Thanks, Rob. That was great. I would like to maybe just spend the next couple minutes giving you a little bit of a summary of how Lingo is going to be used in the real world. So how people can take the tools that you just saw Rob demonstrate and use them in a practical way. And I've got two examples that I'd like to show. One is this is from Arcadia. Many of you are probably familiar with Arcadia as a funding organization that is focused on supporting the creation and documentation of cultural heritage for the Global South. And I want to just give a quick summary of what Arcadia have done and what they still need to do and how Lingo fits into their workflow. So they started several years ago by providing funding to various universities with the specific intention of building inventories of cultural heritage in the Global South. And they ended up funding nine individual groups from different universities. And unsurprisingly, what they got were 9 different data sets, all managed with Arches. But because they were implemented independently, they ended up using more than 250 thesauri, over 22,000 concepts, many of which I think are very likely the same concept, but with different identifiers across the different data sets, and ultimately to describe a pretty substantial number of resources. Now that they're in this position, they're asking a very important and kind of obvious question, which is, how do we take these individual data sets and interact with them in a more efficient way? So right now, if you want to query those data sets, you got to go to 9 different Arches implementations and ask questions and get search results. A better method, and what we'll be doing with Arcadia, is to introduce Lingo as a way of harmonizing those different concepts into a single resource, into a single system that can then index across all those applications and provide a method for allowing a person to ask the question once and let the technology do the distributed query and aggregate results and get back to them. So it's a significant improvement in accessibility, usability, and ultimately a much more effective way of searching. And it has the added benefit of ensuring that the scholarship that went into each of those different projects, ends up getting documented and lined up appropriately, so that when this is done, not only will Arcadia have funded the creation of a substantial inventory, this creation of a single thesaurus is an invaluable resource for the field because of how it can connect these data. And ultimately, the work will go into not only harmonizing across these different projects, but harmonize with the AAT as well. A second example comes from historic England, and I've just somewhat cryptically called this a manage once, use many times example, and I'm gonna let Phil Carlisle, who's here via video, give you a quick summary of what he wants to do.
Hi, I'm Phil Carlisle. I'm the Senior Data Standards Specialist at Historic England, and I've been involved in developing thesauri and reference data since the late 20th century. In addition to my day job, I'm also the chair of the Terminology Working Group of FISH. FISH is the Forum on Information Standards in Heritage, which is a cross-sectoral body formed of cultural heritage organisations such as ourselves, the National Trust, the British Museum, and our sister organisations in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. at Historic England, as I say, we manage a lot of vocabularies, and the ones that we currently maintain were originally developed for internal use in the many databases we have. Such diverse, disparate data sets that we have, as you can imagine, have evolved over time. And more recently, the management of the vocabularies they contain has become problematic. To solve this problem, we've decided that we're going to implement Lingo. So in the first instance, Lingo will be used to centralize vocabulary management within our own systems. So the idea is to bring our vocabularies under one roof, or one-stop shop for vocabulary management, as it were. In addition, though, as well as using Lingo internally, we want to host a instance on behalf of FISH, and this will provide access for our cultural heritage partners in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and indeed for the first time, our equivalent bodies in Southern Ireland, the Republic. This has been a dream for 25 years. And as I say, until now, we've not had a tool that would allow us to develop such a great resource. So we think that Lingo is that tool, finally, and we think it's a game changer. So we're really, really excited to finally have a tool that's built for vocabulary managers like myself. So it's no longer an afterthought. It's not the add-on to the recording database for undersea heritage or protected heritage. It's let's build vocabs. But also being able to do that with colleagues, instead of having to sit down and share spreadsheets, we can all log onto the same system. We can map across, we can map to external vocabulary such as the AAT. Really exciting time to be in vocabulary management. So with that, I'll hand over back to the guys in the room with you, and have a great meeting.
So I don't know how you can follow up with being excited about being vocabulary management. I'm going to try, and I'll start with giving you more of a picture of what Phil just described. So here's kind of the current state. The blue circles on your left represent a whole suite of applications that Historic England have deployed internally. And they're for things, well, Keystone, for example, is the Greater London Heritage Historical Environment Record. Warden is another Arches-based system for managing cultural heritage. Mariner is their maritime heritage system. They've got digital asset management systems, case management systems, a whole suite of systems. They're all managed internally. Historic England spends a lot of time managing the vocabularies in each one of those systems independently, despite the fact that there's broad overlap amongst all those vocabularies. You can just imagine how difficult that is, how inefficient that is, and how quickly it undermines the ability to pull information from multiple systems into a single cohesive unit. It's just extremely difficult. And they have sister organizations in the green circles here that they'd love to have better, more efficient interactions with when it comes to sharing vocabularies. Again, there's a lot of overlap between the national vocabularies for England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. And as Phil noted in his video, Ireland's a whole other thing. They're out there by themselves. It'd be lovely to be able to work with them, but right now it just hasn't happened. What Lingo will allow for is a way of managing the vocabularies and thesauri for their internal systems in a much more formal, centralized way, so they can then be published to subscribing applications, ensuring that we use the same terminology, the same concepts, the same concept identifiers, so that the descriptive information in those systems can be linked and integrated and searched. And now it opens up an opportunity, as Phil mentioned, to work much more collaboratively with their colleagues in the other UK nations, and finally a way of taking advantage of a unique, I think, political opportunity, which is to work with Ireland on a very specific technical opportunity, which is harmonizing the vocabularies. So what do you get for this effort? what do you get for managing vocabularies centrally and thinking about publishing for subscribers? Well, you get better, more integrated data internally. You get the opportunity to improve collaboration and idea sharing across organizations, and you compound that effort. Every time those vocabularies are used and enhanced, it's better for everybody. But I know many of you are probably sitting there thinking, well, okay, Lingo is managing vocabularies. There's lots of ways to do that. There are certainly good proprietary tools out there. Why not just use those? And the answer is you can do, but more and more the costs of licensing the software are becoming quite substantial for many, many organizations in the cultural heritage world. But even if you can afford the licensing costs, you are making a decision by going with a proprietary alternative. And that means you're joining the vendors community. And that means you're going to participate with potentially a smaller group of folks. And that community is driven by the vendors' goals, not necessarily the community's goals. So I think there's a good argument for using Lingo. And it basically boils down to where is the value being created. When you use open source tools like Arches and Lingo specifically for managing vocabularies, what you build are data that are valuable for everybody who participates. This is a key thing because the alternative is to create value for the vendor that provides the tool. And I think our mission, the Getty's mission, is to ensure that the community can do a better, more effective job of preserving and protecting our shared heritage. So investing in an approach, a business model, if you will, that improves the more people use it, the better it is. The network effect is something we should take advantage of. I also, before I start to close, I want to add a couple additional thoughts. And one is, more and more Lingo is not just for people. It's not just for the Phil Carlisles of the world. It's also for the agents that we are more and more using to filter and interact with our information. And AI agents in particular are some of the things that we're thinking about. Imagine a way of reducing the number of hallucinations that your AI agent engages in by giving it access to the kind of structure, definition, context of a well-constructed vocabulary. In the case of Arches, we're thinking about this quite carefully. One of the things that I think is really quite interesting is the ability to point an AI or a large language model not only at the contextual information inside of a vocabulary, but the semantic models that Arches presents so that an AI can understand not only the schema of the information that you have, but also the descriptive information that you're using to define the content of that schema. This is, I think, quite a powerful thing. And you can see maybe, or if you squint, you might be able to start thinking about how not only the definitions and hierarchies of a vocabulary might be helpful, but the imagery that we connect to it, and the notes that we connect to it. Rob pointed this out, and I think it's worth just reiterating. We're pretty stoked that we have a version 1 out and that it came out on time, and that it seems from our early indications to be quite robust, and we're really quite pleased. But there's still plenty more to do, and the things that I think are high priority are streamlining, improving workflows for reviewing and managing candidate concepts, merging and splitting concepts, and approval workflows for ensuring that edits are seen with human eyes. We would love to extend Arches to support hierarchies and models for people, groups, places, and periods. There's lots you can do with versioning. Lingo already does a good job of managing history of edits, but there are some very interesting things with versioning. And of course, all software requires ongoing maintenance. And with that, I'll stop and let Kevin bring this plane in for landing.
Thanks, Dennis. As we wrap, I'm just going to bring it back to community, sustainability, nerd out for a little bit on open source. Lingo benefits from recent initiatives that were designed to sustain the Arches project in the long term. In 2025, community-based Arches governance was launched. And for an open source community, this means transparency, as conversations and decisions are made in public, with representatives throughout the community having a seat at the table. Sustainability, because shared governance means the software isn't tied to the support or survival of a single organization. And participation, which has a compound effect by strengthening the commitment of key Arches stakeholders. In addition, an endowment has been established to ensure the ongoing support for the Arches project well into the future. And one of the benefits of the nature of open source development is agility. When we make decisions, we're not asking, how can we leverage new technologies to maximize profit? We're asking, how can we better meet community needs? How are we advancing the Getty mission? We have the ability to make targeted changes based on your feedback now, as Dennis said, not far down a predetermined corporate roadmap. And a key part of this is our version 1 strategy. Open source isn't about a finished product, it's a living tool. In fact, in a fast-changing world of technology, no sustainable software is ever finished, and the current Lingo release is just the beginning. Lingo is a product of a continued collaboration with the community, particularly Historic England, but with input from others in the community, including Getty Vocabs. As Dennis mentioned, there's a lot more we can do. Version 1 is out. Feedback now is more relevant than ever. Because it's open source, feedback received on Lingo today from you or anybody in the community could result in improvement in days or weeks. Like Phil, we're excited about what Lingo offers the community. Adopting Lingo isn't just a technical choice, it's a values-based choice based on to participate in a sustainable and open future. And just closing that out, the world's cultural memory deserves to be findable, and Lingo is how we're helping to make it so, together, transparently, and for the field. And I just want to thank you all so much for being here. I know it was a pretty packed hour, but the fact that we were able to fill an hour, I think, makes us feel good about the fact that we've produced something that a lot of people are excited about.